Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Live Boldly with Sara. I'm so excited to bring Sara Nasserzadeh to this podcast episode today. So go grab your journals. We've been talking a lot over the last couple of weeks about relationships in terms of, we had, for example, the Wolf of Wall Street, the ex-wife of the Wolf of Wall Street on. That was an amazing conversation. This last week, which is actually today, as I'm recording this, I did an episode on suffering and how suffering can actually lead to learning more about who we are. Today's episode, we're going to keep this oh so good. We're going to be talking about relationships. At some point, we have to dive in and have them, right? I guess if we choose. And so I really want to dive into the lightness of this and Sara's book, her new book that just came out. So go grab your journals and let's start this conversation. Sara, would you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about who you are.
Absolutely. So I go by Sara Nasserzadeh. So those are my given names and last name. My new book is Love by Design, 6 ingredients to build a lifetime of love. And I want this to be hopeful. I want this to be a little bit challenging because I'm going to challenge all the notions that we grew up with, including myself. If you read the book, you see how miserable I felt.
Hmm.
Abiding by those rules, and then hopefully offering people more than change of mind and worldview around love. And I would love for all of us to experience and express love differently.
Do you find, I want to start, let's pull all the way back. I'm thinking about my own relationship that I have climbed out of. Do you find that a lot of people are afraid of love, especially after having been in perhaps toxic or difficult relationships in their past?
Absolutely. In every language that I'm familiar with, there is a saying that talks about once bitten, twice shy, right?
Yeah.
So is that what you say in English? I think
Yeah,
that's what.
it is. You're spot on.
So it's the same thing, and that's the preservative nature of our nervous system that wants to preserve us from further hurt or
Yeah.
heartbreak or all that. Sometimes, though, I have to say, when it comes to love, people would love to fall in love, break their heart, mend it or not, moving on, doing it all over again. So
Right.
we have research on, that sort of love-seeking behavior. And that's wonderful if that's what people would like to pursue, experiencing of that deep sense of tantalizing.
Yeah.
And when I say, based on that, you will have dangling from chandelier sex, maybe, these sort of things. But this book specifically I wrote to give people hope who would like to build a lifetime of relationship, loving relationship with somebody. And they didn't know how to go about it. They didn't know what sort of self work that is needed beyond trauma work that is trendy in the world right now. Or, for example, where to put my effort. Now that I'm willing to do the work, where do I put my efforts? That's what my lifetime of research and practice across 40 countries.
You touched on something. You said the trendy of the trauma work that is trendy today. And it is. It's a very trendy thing. What I also talked to you about before we jumped in, which is why I'm so excited about this, is that at some point, let's also, as Dr. Edith Eger says, that I talk about often, walk through the valley and don't set up camp there, right? Because we all walk through a valley of darkness. But what is it like to be in the light on the other side? Because that's ultimately where we as humans, that's where we want to be, right? And so it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of bold steps to get there.
Yeah. Even listening to us today will require a different level of boldness, I tell you. Because the first time that I was presenting the model, the emergent love model that came out of our research at Stanford University, when the talk was done, a woman stood out, sobbing and clapping at the same time. I was so moved. I asked for the mic to be handed to her. And she said, "Look, you just changed everything I knew about love. And where have you been 20 years ago?" So it takes a lot of courage. It took a lot of courage for me to say no, to heck with what I grew up with, that, that 1 + 1 = 1, falling in love, happily ever after, whatever. But nobody showed us what happens after Cinderella and the Prince Charming pass through that bridge. What happened in the everyday life that they had to chauffeur their children to their classes, the car broke down, and then your mother called, yelled at me, and then our finances are in Iraq. So then what?
Then what? And you have been pushing the envelope, may I say, for a number of years. When I was reading up on you, there were a couple of things I was like, you go. I love pushing the envelope. You had a talk show. Is it a talk show on BBC? Tell
Well,
us a little bit about
it was
that.
an education, sure. It was an educational program called The Whispers, and it was for the BBC World Service and for Farsi speaking audience around the world. It was the first of its kind in the Middle East. And
Wow. And how was that for you, like standing up and actually having these conversations back then when perhaps it wasn't the thing to be doing, right? Like back then as well. How was that for you?
yes, and there were layers to that. Back then, I was a young woman. This is 2006 that I started it. So I was very young, a woman from the Middle East. And I'm speaking about topics that I'm trying to be evidence informed, not abiding by the narratives that are
Right.
carrying on in the society. And there were certain words that we didn't even have in Farsi, or they weren't on top of mind in Farsi. Let's say, for example, orgasm, foreplay, these sort of things. And I needed to work with the Academy of Languages inside Iran to be able, with one of the old mentors that I had, who was a member of that committee, just to make sure that we come up with words that people can use, because language has power. If I'm
Mm,
sitting here and talking to you and say, Sarah, people have orgasms, and as an English speaking person growing up around this language, orgasm means something to you. But if I just say that, I'm speaking in Farsi or Arabic or Pashto or Hindu or, whatever language that I'm speaking in, and then I all of a sudden say, yeah, and then as you're having orgasm and use these Latin originated and English word, then what does that mean to people? That only foreigners, only Westerners, only liberated can have orgasm? So this
wow.
was very important for me to create language around certain things that people need to have language to own them, to be able to relate to them, that this is actually something that I can want in my life too. Not that all people are oppressed, by the way, in that part of the world. That's a
Right.
misconception. But regarding sexuality in 2006, you can imagine that it was a very interesting and rewarding experience for me all around, I have to say. Very, very rewarding. And I'm so grateful to the BBC that gave me that opportunity, because majority of countries who speak the language, they're under censorship. So I could meet people where they were, on the
Yeah.
corner of the bedroom, listening to the radio. I had a radio show, and years later, and then I had the TV show. I meet them in their living room. Like nobody could stop me, nobody could censor me there, right? But
Right.
if I was going to publish or put something online, they could easily censor me. So that was the purpose when I went to the BBC and spoke with the editors, and I said, look, here's my mission in life, can you help me? And to their credit, they really did. And it was incredible, the number of people who called one time. This still brings chills to me, like how many years later. Um, I was editing the show, and it was really interesting. After the first series, I asked them to send me to the production class, because I realized that the content is so sensitive that if they cut a word in a misplaced area, the whole meaning could change. So again, kudos to them to kind of buy into my argument to send me to production class. I produced, from the season 2, just to keep the content with integrity. One time I was editing it was around midnight. I was still in the studio editing the next week's show, and the phone rang. I picked up the phone, and this was like a voicemail that people would call and leave their messages. So I picked up the phone, and then a guy on the other side said, with very thick accent, said, well, this is in their language, but I'm just translating in English. And then he said, I came to the town to buy bread, and I have a question for Dr. Sara. I said, I'm it. Ask me. I'm here, ask me the question. He was a member of Taliban. Can you believe it?
Wow.
I mean, that it was like, and I started crying. I couldn't even talk. I could not talk to the guy because I felt
Wow.
like, really? Is that who I'm reaching?
Wow. So many things, so many directions right now as I'm just sitting in that moment with you. What that must have been like. And that is, I want everybody to truly hear this, is that we don't understand, fully grasp, and nor will we ever fully grasp the number of people that we individually can reach in this as humans, right? Like around the world, the number of people that we can reach, that we do reach, and we don't even realize it. We don't understand as humans how even just passing somebody at the grocery store can have such a huge impact until a moment like this happens. And then we're brought back to our human-centered space again and have this realization that every one of our voices matters and our truth matters, the words matter. Wow, I'm blown away.
Mhm. Yeah, me
I
too.
am blown away.
It is incredible, how much we feel that, they are the other. Who is the other? Talking
Right.
about human connectivity. If I have something to offer, I should. I
Mhm.
should really get up and do the work in the morning and make sure that I leave the message behind for people who will access them in their own way and will apply them into their lives to bring more meaning, more joy, more hope to the world and to their lives.
I just shared, and then I want to dive into all of this with you. I just shared a couple weeks ago on a podcast episode how I was hiking down into the Grand Canyon, and this couple from South Korea wanted to know if they could reach the bottom. They wanted my expertise. Do you think I can reach the bottom in time, or do you think that we should turn around before it gets too dark? And we had this very quick yet extremely meaningful and resonant conversation about the specifics, like about can you do this, can you get down there. And what I realized that was holding them back was one thing, and that was food. It was the only thing. They just didn't have enough food. So I gave them my sandwich, and I said, you know what, you need this experience far more than I do this sandwich to get down there, because I've got other stuff to eat, you don't. And the reason I share this is because it is in that one small thing, a sandwich, that allowed them to have this experience. And then they wrote me this message through Instagram and said how their view of even the United States has changed,
Oh,
how their view on humanity changed, right? And in reality, we're all human, connected, right? And we seem to forget that because we are walking so quickly in this world, and we don't slow down enough to simply look at something as powerful as a morsel of love. That's it. Like, this is what we're talking about. It's the morsel of love.
exactly, exactly. Yeah, that little act of kindness that a lot of people even might be thinking about, but not doing it because
Right.
of their own fears, that fear of rejection, fear of how am I going to be perceived, especially in this culture of cancel and
Yeah.
um, polarity, and how am I going to be perceived? How am I going to be received by people? We keep going back and shrinking and shrinking and shrinking in what makes us human.
Exactly. Oh my, I'm so happy to have you here today. I just, wow. So let's dive into this book. Let's dive into, share it with us. I want to dive into these principles that you have, and tell us about how you even came to them. How did you get to this research, to this work?
Absolutely. So, as a researcher, I should know that the data that we collect and whatever that the outcome is as good as the questions that we ask. And this
Mm,
is not only me, Socrates actually was the first person who came up with it. So, the wisdom is out there. We just need to approach the right people and ask the right questions to get what we want. So far, majority of people who've been researched in the realm of relationships, especially romantic relationships, were easy targets like college students, people who could come, just to fill out a questionnaire, this and that. And what I was interested in was I wanted to know why relationships thrive, So we went after 159 couples who self-identified as thriving in their relationships and their individual lives. And these are different sexual, relational orientations, representative sample of race and ethnicity and education, all that from the United States. And we studied them with individually as well as a couple. We asked them about certain ingredients that emerged from our first research. The first research was the research I've done, qualitative for people who are familiar with it, qualitative out of my own practice of 20 years sitting with couples across the world. And I went through my notes that I took, session notes, just to see what were the concepts that are so always come up. Like there are certain things like trust, respect, attraction. What do they mean by that? And then put it into the frame of ground theory research, grounded theory, which means you have a bunch of material, and then with no hypothesis, you just go over it, see what emerges from the research. And when you reach a point of, we call it point of saturation, there's nothing new comes up, then you stop. You say, I think I have 12 concepts, for example, right? So I had that. And then from 312 couples. And then I put that into the quantitative research, and I teamed up with Dr. Pejman Azarmina, who is also my husband, the psychometric specialist. And then we looked at whether this is just the person's perspective of their own notes and research, or couples in thriving relationships actually connect with these two. So what I'm offering people is pretty solid. It's not love as a concept, as something that we talk about, feel about. It's pretty solid. We define it, we put language around it, we know how to get it and how to design it. So that is the concept behind it. And I'm done with seeing people in pain. If you want to have experiences around love, have your heart broken and rebroken and, enjoy yourself, wonderful. What I'm offering in this book is, again, for people who would like to build a lifetime of love with someone. So
I love this. I love this. I'm done with pain too.
yeah, we must
I'm done with it. I'm done with and just understand that yes, and in any relationship you have pain comes up, you have suffering. And on the other side of that, you learn from all of it to be able to grow and become better as as an individual and as a couple. So what did you find? So dive into these concepts with us. I'm going to use these in my own life right now.
Absolutely. May I just comment a little bit on that pain and suffering?
Yeah, absolutely.
So remember how I said we are a culture of trauma these days? Every channel that you tune in, trauma with small
Every.
everything. That's okay, because maybe
Mhm.
that's where we are as a species. We are going through a lot these days after pandemic with all the wars and, unsettlement around the world.
Right.
But on the other side of it, let's not forget about the definition of trauma. Trauma is something that happens that we cannot comprehend with the frame of mind that we have in that moment in time. So we lose a sense of agency, sense of cognitive ability to analyze it and process it in that moment. That becomes a traumatic interpretation of that event, right? If we look at it this way, then I tie it back to this whole concept of emergent love. If I'm experiencing love with the concept of 1+1 come together and then build a shared percent, like 1+1 equals 1, then obviously I'm going to experience the events in life very differently than if I go in it with epistemology, with a frame of thinking that 1+1 equals 3. So a log, a spark come together in a conducive context, make fire. I don't expect the fire to be all encompassing and exist on its own for no good reason. It just doesn't exist, right? So
Right.
emergent quality of love, I want people to really take a step back and think about the new perspective. Within that context, pain exists. Of course it exists. It shows you that you're a human. It shows that you feel. It shows that you're healthy. You're alive. But it doesn't turn into trauma that you cannot move past. It doesn't become open wound that bleeds all over. It's much more controlled. You know how to lick it. You know how to put a Band-Aid on it, turn it into a scar, look at it and say, hey, I got this scar. Here's what I learned from it. I grew because of it, right? So that's what we're talking about.
Yes, that so makes sense. That is so beautiful. Thank you for that.
Of course.
Thank you for that.
Of course. And now the 6 ingredients. So
Yes.
when we say in the conducive context and log and spark and all that, what are those 6 ingredients? And yes, they are not negotiable, people, because I hear people say, can we have respect and not attraction? No, not happening. At least based on our research, this was not the case. Okay.
Oh, I have so many questions to dive in with you on this. This is so good. Oh, it's so good.
Lovely.
I know.
So the first one is attraction. What do you want to be around each other? What do you want to be around yourself to begin with, right? And expanding people's minds from only sexual attraction to financial, social, intellectual attraction, all sorts of attraction, right? So that's attraction. And we can talk about sexual chemistry versus sexual harmony, intimacy, the meaning to it, all of that, if we get a chance today.
Yes.
Right. The other one is respect. How do you show that you prioritize me? How do you show that you respect my boundaries lovingly and firmly? How do I respect myself with my boundaries? How do I communicate them to you? Because boundaries these days became a show of, as I call it, acquired narcissism. We give, walk all over ourselves and each other. And then we reach a point that we punch each other. It's like passive aggressive. Or that acquired narcissism, everything is becoming about me. Me. It's about me. No, that's not healthy. So the healthiest way is when you feel like you're at peace and you are communicating your boundaries as invitations, how to be around me, how to treat me lovingly and firmly.
I love that.
Right?
Teach
So
people how to treat you.
yes, exactly. By also treating them well and treating yourself well. Everything is reciprocal. Everything. We cannot expect other people to respect us when I'm not respectable.
Absolutely.
That's very important. Or I'm not respectful to other people, right? This goes, by the way, to any relationship with our kids. That nowadays I see so many parents struggle with their kids because they're not respectful to them. You don't get the respect back. You just cater to them. You are their maids and butlers. You're not really, parenting. So sorry, that's another
Just love
conversation.
I'm a mom of 3. Totally get it.
Totally
get it.
Mom bonding.
Yep.
Oh yeah. So for trust has 2 qualities that are not to be compromised. At the heart of it is commitment, whatever that we're committing to. And then the other one is reliability and consistency. You cannot show up 50% of the times or 90% of the times for yourself or the other and expect that the trust would be there. A lot goes into that, like the concept of a person's respecting and showing up for themselves in a consistent and reliable way, and show up for the other person, their values, what matters to them, as well. So that's important. And I'm not asking people to be perfect. We do drop the ball, but know how to mend it properly.
That's good. How do you mend it properly?
So I have this tool that I give to people that I feel like it's on a daily basis. I call it, I lend you a arm. I know grammatically is wrong, but it's like a arm for people to remember, not an arm. So A is you're going to acknowledge the situation. What happened, right? And then appreciate the hurt that it caused you and the other person, and talk about that. So A. R is you reassure them that you're in this together. I want to fix this. We're in this together. So anything that is a joining moment, we are a team. We're going to do this, right? Because that is the piece that is often missing in the repair situation. And then the last but not least is the mend. Discuss about it. And, like, how are you going to mend this? I'm not going to do that again. Or I'm going to make sure that we have a shared calendar so I do show up for the soccer practice. I'm going to, no. So, all of that, whatever that mending situation is. And it could be as simple as, can we carve time in our calendar to go for a walk and talk about this?
Ooh.
Right? So,
Simple things, the simple things. Don't overcomplicate it.
yeah, absolutely.
That's beautiful.
So that's trust. Shared vision has multiple categories, like from geographical to social to, different categories that we have, physiological. Where are we committed to go together, especially when we don't feel like it?
Oh,
So that's important. And then with that, I talk about the difference between compromise, negotiation, and sacrifice. A lot of people at the beginning of relationship, especially when they base their relationship based on sexual chemistry and attraction only, they go all the way in, they sacrifice a lot, and then somewhere down the line, they're like, what am I doing? What is happening? What is left of me? And then they will diverge. So let's think about it. Sacrifice should be really preserved for really specific things in life. And I prefer that you do negotiation and compromise for the most part. But obviously, sacrifices happen too. But then you need to be very clear. And there are exercises in the book that I give people to kind of differentiate them and live by them to make sure that, when they make a decision, they can live with it. Compassion. A lot of people, well, as humans, you know how we're talking today, and I say something about motherhood or parenthood, you say, oh, me too, I'm a mother of three too. So that is normal, that is sociable, that is healthy. It's called relating. We relate to one another, right? I'm hungry. Are you hungry too? All of that. Or, for example, one thing that you did with that South Korean couple, that you're like, okay, so relating to their experience and trying to be there for them, right? Now, you breached to the realm of compassion there. You showed up for them, not sacrificing anything about yourself, but you showed up for the other person too, right? So that's compromise. In a couple, then one of the things, and empathy is when we feel with another person. One of the things that I would love to introduce in the book, based on science, people, this is not hokey pokey. I want you, don't over empathize with each other unless in certain contexts. For example, when you're in an erotic space or when you're commiserating with each other, empathizing with each other, feeling with the other person is good. You cry together, you laugh together, all that. But for everyday stuff, a lot of people come to me and say, you know what? I came home, I shared this excitement, and my partner stole it completely. That's over empathizing. Or, for example, I come to my partner and say, you hurt me, or something hurt me. And they either become defensive or they're like, how could you be hurt? They're trying to make sense of it for themselves to see, why am I not feeling it? Because you're looking for empathy. But if you really separate yourself and be there for the person, when they come to share something with you, let's say, for example, that hurt situation, I give an analogy of bleeding, that I say, I'm bleeding. It doesn't matter. If you cut me, somebody else cut me, I'm bleeding. The bleeding is the issue, right?
right.
You need to show up for me, not to come and say that you're bleeding, I'm bleeding too. Look, mine is even bigger.
Hijacking,
Exactly.
hijacking the emotion, hijacking the feeling, hijacking the situation.
And we do that under the name of empathy and love.
Right.
So
Interesting.
compassion
Interesting.
is showing up for yourself and the other, and show up for the other without making it about you.
Mm-hmm.
And there are lots of tools there for people to use. And last but not least, acts of loving. Acts of loving are tender. You make the other person feel special in like simple ways. You give them benefit of the doubt. You are tender in your touch and words. And you're specific. If you give a compliment to them, it's specific to them. If you have a nickname, it's not shared with your little sister and your wife and your mother.
Mm.
Or I have clients who say the same endearing terms that my partner uses for our pet is the same name that he calls me in, by those names. So,
Yeah.
Again, they're not rocket science, but if you really think about them, they are, because we neglect them so much.
It's fascinating to me because I'm thinking about these six core ingredients. And I always talk about the relationship triangle as trust, respect, shared goals, which is what you also have in here: trust, respect, shared vision, right? That's shared goals. And then I always say that the golden thread that we so often negate or we don't use is communication.
Mhm.
But it's not simply communication through words, it's communication listening, it's communication through action, through showing up, because we communicate in many, many ways. And that's what you're talking about here. We communicate through attraction through one another. How are we going to show up in our loving behaviors? It's the golden thread that we so often don't utilize
Mhm.
in our relationships.
Yes, there's a whole chapter on physical connection, because when we talk about physical connection of a couple, people talk about frequency and quality of sex.
Right,
That's
right.
that's all. That's all we have. It's way more than that. I'm a sexologist, so I should be talking about sex and na. But there's so much more. There's so much more because we fulfill so many different roles, and each of them deserve to be communicated in a different way through touch.
So I want to dive into the traction. Can we step into attraction for a moment? Because I was just having this conversation with my clients on this Grand Canyon retreat that I was leading, and we were talking about the types of people that we are attracted to. I look at my past and my patterns and the people that I was attracted to. Oh, hell no, not anymore. I'm not attracted to that. And the reason why is because of that internal relationship that I now have with myself, right? Which is what we were also talking about: the trust with self, compassion, respecting self. If you're not going to respect yourself first, how can somebody else step up and respect you equally? And here's my question, and this is the conversation that we dove into: was how do we shift that attraction from what once was the unhealthy attraction, where we are attracted perhaps to the explosion, right? Where that you're attracted to and you're like, ooh, that's what I want. How do you shift that from what once was to what we also now know is healthy, which is respecting ourselves? Because I figured out a way to do that. And I want you to speak to those other women and men that are also in that space where they want that. And they've oftentimes said that. They said, I've heard many people say, but that's boring. And I'm like, not once you get into it, it's not. It's actually quite amazing. That's the space where you do find the magic. How do you help people to shift that attraction from unhealthy to healthy?
So first and foremost, expanding their horizons. What do you do to take people to the Grand Canyon walks? And is that Grand Canyon that you take people
Yeah,
to?
we hike down to the bottom of the Grand Canyon and we spend 2 nights down there. And it is awesome because we develop that relationship with self in a different way. And people climb out of there and they're like, I will never live in the way that I once was, which is why I do this deep work with people.
That's
It
amazing.
is expanding their horizons, expanding their perspectives, expanding who they are and how they want to live.
Yeah. And there's a way in psychosomatic
Yeah.
work that when you, depending on the topic that you're thinking about and talking about, you can choose the slope, you can choose how hard the physical exertion is and how easy it is. And usually the way that I do it is actually I take my clients to hike. We talk about the difficulties or stuckness as we go up. And as we go down, they come up with the idea
Yeah.
just through this and through bilateral stimulation of the brain, as you're in the nature. And so when you do that, you are also inducing that new perspective to people. So when you ask me how this is possible, that is one way that you're doing it, right?
Right.
Take them out of their natural habitat or something that they're used to even introduce them to, there's a world out there, people, there's this, not this narrow vision that we have around love and in our own bubble. So that is the first. The second thing is, it's important for people to know that where the attention goes, energy flows.
Oh, Say that again. Everybody write this down. I do love this one. I have this one placed everywhere.
Right. So where the attention goes and energy flows.
Yes.
You start seeing things differently when your frame of mind changes. And again, there's always research to back all of these up, right? When you are more exposed to a mentality that 1 + 1 = 1, you are looking for it. You see it in everything and everywhere, and you pursue it. So when you're asking me how to expand people's minds around their attraction, the first thing is, what is it that you are running away from? What is it that you're drawn to without knowing, because it's your default and blueprint? This is like you had a mother who was unpredictable and you didn't know what kind of a mother you would get. Angry, sad, kind, caring, which kind? It's very likely for you to either run away from that kind of a person with instability in mood and behavior, or you are going to be drawn to drama all your life not knowing. So know what is it that you're attracted to and why. And if there is a need for you to mend it and rewrite it for yourself, rewrite the narrative, do it beforehand. And if you are in a relationship listening to this, there's still hope. So you can actually share the shared language, share understanding, share viewpoint, this new point with your partner as well. And then go through each points of attraction with them and make sure that you grow together. So one of the things that I see in couples is I see people individually as well as couples. In individual sessions, there's so much that comes up. And I tell them, well, only if your partner knew this.
Right.
I don't know, right? Again, with the trauma culture, they feel like they should only share the trauma and heartbreak and horrible things and adverse childhood experiences that they had with one another. But may I invite you to also share with each other, what is it that you're proud of? What is it that brings you joy, hope? There's this exercise that I give people to do at night, every day, whether they're living together, not living together. Find 10 minutes, do this. Oi and joy. What brought you oi? And oi goes first. Like, for example, something that was heavy on your heart, something that touched you the wrong way. It could be a piece of news. Just keep it at that. Or even your partner looking at you the wrong way. Oi, right? Something that heavy on your heart.
Right.
And joy, you're talking about what brought you joy is smile. Our child today did this. Or, you put the extra sugar in my cup of tea. That warms my heart. This corresponds with the neurophysiology that we know around gratitude, and also corresponds with a very specific principle that we have in social psychology called reciprocal liking. If I know that you like me, I'm going to like you back.
Oh.
And that is the first thing that dies in long-term coupledom. Because we are so practical, transactional with each other, we forget to show each other how much we like each other, actually. And then
Wow.
over a period of time, if I perceive that you don't like me, I'm not going to like you back.
It goes back to like kindergarten rules.
Mhm.
Like literally, this goes back to kindergarten rules. What was it like on the playground? If somebody didn't like me, I was like, well, okay, then I guess I don't like you back.
Mhm.
Wow. We do something similar at the end of the day. When I some friends and I, we do these long hikes where we're out there for like 9 days, 22 days, like a long time in the mountains. And at the end of every day, because they're hard days, I mean, we're climbing some of the most dangerous peaks. And we sit together around our meal, which is something that we also don't do enough of, right? We sit together, we break bread together, and we talk about what was our favorite meal of the day? What was the favorite thing that we ate? What was the most difficult moment? And what was the wow? We call it wow pow chow. The wow,
Oh,
isn't that great? Steal it, everybody. It's so good. It's so good. The wow is what is your wow moment of the day? The pow is the ooh, that was like really tough, right?
mm,
That was the pow. And the chow is what was our favorite food of the day? And
cool. I
listen,
love
isn't
that.
that great? Thank you to my niece Grace, who brought this to the circle when we were on the trail together. And the interesting thing about it is this: sometimes it's the smallest things that we didn't even realize. So for us, for example, when we're out there and we don't have that much food left because we're eating through our entire bear canister of stuff, some of the most amazing things that we could eat is a bite of a Snickers bar, or, 3 almonds that we had left at the bottom that we found, or something that we found in our jacket pocket that we didn't even know was there. Sometimes it's literally walking over something that we found on the trail that we picked up and ate. I mean, it's just how it is. It's so interesting because it's the moments, right? It's like those little moments that we walk over and we don't even see sometimes. So yeah, feel free to steal it. Wow, pow, chow. It's a great exercise around the dinner table.
That's really amazing. Yeah. I'm gonna probably give it a try tonight at dinner table.
Yeah, do it. Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's great.
I just love this conversation. And I know that we do have to wrap up shortly. Would you come back, please?
With, with
Would
pleasure.
you come back?
Look, I'm here to change the world and create world peace one relationship at a time. I talk to anyone who listens. I talk to anyone who believes in it and joins the mission. And we need more love in the world, and we need to really know how to create that peace of heart and clarity of mind. People think when they are in emergent love model kind of relationship, lifetime model of love, it's boring, it's monotonous. Actually, it's not, because it frees up so much of your energy, space, mind space to do wonderful things in life.
I agree. I'm in the dating space right now, and I 100% agree with you. There's nothing better. I remember my old therapist saying to me at one point, she said, who's now my colleague, by the way, and oh, we laugh about the past. We laugh about the past and like what it was like when I first met her versus the person that I am today. And I remember her saying to me, you're going to have to, at some point, shift from the way that you've done things in the past, right? And understand that some of your greatest memories are going to be made in what right now you would view as boring. And she was 100% right. She was 100% right, because I didn't know what I didn't know. Nobody knows what they don't know. And I had to step into the space of what I never had experienced before, which the reason why I hadn't stepped into it is because it was calm waters. I didn't know how to do calm waters. I only knew how to do the treacherous, right? And when I stepped into the calm waters, I'm like, whoa, this is peace filled. I can breathe. I'm calm. And it creates so much space for the other stuff that I want to do in this lifetime. So I really encourage everybody to shift the way that we are, right, perceiving some of those things that ultimately are not healthy, right? And like perceiving what is healthy for ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, again, define healthy for yourself first. This is
Yes.
size fits all. And if you're in a dating scene, Sarah, specifically, like chapter 3 is for you. What we bring to love. What is my essence? And as a point of attraction, we get attracted to one another, but we stop being intimate with ourselves. Into me, I see, because I
Mm.
change over time, hopefully. And then into me, you see. I invite you to see different parts of me, and what part of me I bring to the table in every relationship matters a lot. And what part of the other person I call in and invite in as well too. So I think, yeah, I thank you so much for doing this work and bringing this information to your listeners.
Well, thank you for doing this work. And what I'm going to encourage all of you to do is this: go get the book. In just a moment, I would like you to share where they can get it from. Read the book, and then send me a message or an email through Instagram, sarah@sarahschultenkranz.com. That's my email. And ask the questions what would you like to us to further dive into in our next conversation? What are the questions that you have, you listeners, that you want to ask, right, for us to dive further into? And just send those questions to me. And then on our next episode, we can dive into those and continue this conversation.
Absolutely. So as we're to get the book, if they want a signed copy, I sign copies.
Love.
Lovebydesignbook.com is the website that people can go. And on the resource page, There are some resources, some exercises that you can go through individually and with your partner or partners, however that your relational orientation allows. And there's a test, relationship panoramic inventory test, that is consisting of more than 10 validated scales that will tell you, like if you are a member of a couple, that will tell you within 28 page on graphs as where you fit with
Wow.
other thriving couples and what are the areas that you're strong at, what are the areas that you need to work on. So it's a very hopeful test. And if you have a provider, you can send it to them for interpretation, or if not, they can actually, the couple, if all of them consent, everybody involved consent, they can receive it themselves. And it's easy to follow. And so it's a relationship panoramic inventory. It's all on the website. And
Fantastic.
join the newsletter, Instagram, anywhere that you can find the information, please do.
Yes, I'm so excited to keep like pushing this into the world. So happy to have met you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And again, everyone, go get the book, listen to it, send me an email, Instagram message, whatever. Ask the questions. What would you like us to dive further into? We are here for you to do just that. So thank you again for coming on. And until next time, keep loving the way that you are. It's just amazing. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. The same to you. Thank you so much for having me, Sarah. It was a
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Thank you.